The internet is full of pretty generic productivity advice. And as a software engineer, you face unique challenges at work, especially when it comes to remaining productive and working at your full potential. And for me, this past year working as a software engineer has had its ups and downs. There's been times when I'm firing on all cylinders and others where, well, not so much. So I went through the top 100 productivity tips and selected the top 10 that have really helped me as a software engineer and the ones that I really think will help me in the future as well. There's a lot of overlap with other careers, so this video will certainly help you if you're not a software engineer, but these particular characteristics of software engineering make it a little different in terms of the productivity strategies that we should implement. So there are three main characteristics that I identified as quite unique to software engineering. The first one being the need to be flexible and continuously adapt to new technologies. The second difference relates to task complexity and technical problem-solving skills. The need to rapidly deliver solutions to very complex problems is definitely a challenge in software engineering. And the third one I would say is a higher probability of burning out because we're constantly using technology, constantly using screens, always under time pressure. There's always new technologies, new things that you have to learn, always stay up to date, and it's such a highly dynamic and rapid career that it's pretty prone to burnout. So those were the three characteristics that are more unique to software engineering, but a lot of these tips will also deal with project management, time management, collaboration, prioritization, and many things that overlap with other careers as I'm. Hola amigos, I'm Diego, a software engineer working in London. And if you're interested in more effective productivity strategies for work and software engineering, make sure you subscribe and join the team. Let's get into it. Tip number one is to break tasks down. And I know we've probably all heard of this, okay, break things down, make it easier for yourself. But in software engineering, it's really crucial. Projects are incredibly complex, requirements are always changing, and trying to tackle a huge task, just diving headfirst into it, is usually a very bad idea. And I have a pretty cool anecdote that highlights the importance of breaking tasks down. Last year, I was doing a coding bootcamp here in London, very intense bootcamp that was 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. And in the mornings when we arrived at the site, we would have a toy problem to start our day with. It was usually 15 or 20 minutes. And some of these coding challenges were incredibly difficult, especially for some of us that didn't have that much experience with. And most people initially just dove headfirst into the problem, started writing code. You just hit your head against the wall and weren't really able to tackle the issue because a lot of these issues had many steps to them, right? And so you would just get frustrated and in the end not really find the solution to the problem. And one day I looked at one of my colleagues there at the coding bootcamp and he was just stepping back like this, just kind of hands clasped here and his eyes were closed. I knew that he used to take naps for the coding bootcamp because he had a very long commute, so sometimes during the day he took naps, but it was really crazy to see him taking nap during the toy problem. Then afterwards we spoke and he got the solution, and I asked him, "What you were taking a nap? What exactly was your idea here?" He said, "No, I wasn't taking a nap. I was just stepping back from the problem, and I closed my eyes and I started thinking about how to tackle it and created a game plan." Having that patience to step back a little bit, plan, write some pseudocode, even though it's a little boring sometimes, and truly understand the requirements and the objective of the new feature that you're trying to implement or the new task you're working on is incredibly important. And as my mother says, the lazy person works double. That's translated from Spanish, so I don't know how much sense that actually makes. But if you're lazy now and try to dive headfirst instead of planning the code you're going to write, you're gonna have more problems to deal with in the future and it's gonna come and bite you in the butt. Now, the importance of single tasking cannot be overstated for software engineering. Software engineering requires deep work, a lot of focused concentration to deal with very complex problems. And we've talked about the danger of multitasking on this channel many times, so make sure that you block any digital and any physical distraction that is around you on your desk, on your devices, to make sure that you can focus as deeply as possible on tackling the things that you need to tackle. And when I've spoken to many of my software engineering friends, they say that working from home some days is actually very beneficial because they don't have the distraction of co-workers, interesting things going on in the workplace. So they actually sometimes get more work done working from home. I think that's, a double-edged sword sometimes, and it can certainly be a bit isolating, but find out the ratio that works for you and make sure that you're just focusing on one thing at a time. The third thing I would recommend is to apply Agile methodology to your work. I know many software teams and software companies, especially the new ones, apply Agile methodologies, but some don't, and most don't to the full extent of what Agile really means. So at university, I got my Scrum Agile project management certificate, and I really fell in love with the Agile methodology, essentially using sprints, iterative development to help software teams manage all the responsibilities and constantly adapt to new user feedback. So if your company is already doing this and this is how you work, wonderful, there's nothing else you need to do, skip to the next tip. But if this is not how your company operates, especially if it's an older company, you can certainly start applying Agile methodology to your own personal work, perhaps then expand it to the team and then become an advocate for change at your company. So first of all, educate yourself on Agile. I'll leave some tools down below so you can do some studying, and then start small. Start implementing some of these Agile methodologies to your own personal work, like time boxing, daily stand-ups, and regular retrospectives. Even if you're just doing them with yourself, I think it's very valuable. Make sure you use an Agile project management tool like Jira or Trello or Asana to the full extent and truly understand what's going on there as well. Learn how to break your important tasks by priority, urgency, and understand user stories and how that works into the whole Agile methodology mix. And constantly seek feedback from your team and your clients so that you can constantly change and within those sprints that you set out for yourself, and understand the value of that feedback and changing rapidly and pivoting. And finally, share the benefits of the approach. If it worked for you, definitely share it with your team, maybe start using it within your team, and then, as I mentioned, become an advocate for a company-wide transformation. The fourth thing I would recommend is to write things down. Keeping a written log of bugs and new features and new things that you found in a code review that you were doing is incredibly important, because keeping those things in your head is very, very difficult. Sometimes you have to analyze very, very long code, and being able to just have those things written down, maybe in a notes app or even pen and paper works. Coming back to those and reporting to your team on those things is incredibly important, so nothing slips through the cracks. Because if something slips through the cracks and it's relatively important, it can cause incredible headaches down the line. And if you're the person that can catch that thing, man, people are going to be incredibly grateful. Then I would recommend focusing on the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle. Many of us know that this rule essentially states that 20% of inputs generate 80% of outputs. For software engineering, that's a pretty interesting approach to work. So make a log of the activities and tasks you perform during a week. Prioritize them in terms of that impact. So try and find that 20% of input that creates that 80% of output. And also be in constant communication with your project manager, because they tend to prioritize and give you tasks. And if there's any discrepancy in that regard where you feel you are working on less impactful tasks or things that are not properly prioritized, make sure you tell your project manager and change those things up, and really keep that open communication. So here are a few ideas to find these magical 20% of inputs that will create that huge output. So in a code base, for example, you can look for the critical components and high impact bugs that are creating those really, really negative effects. Focus your time and energy on those. In terms of features, for example, the core features and the user stories that actually drive the majority of satisfaction and engagement and everything else, make sure you spend most of your time on those things and your effort on those things. In terms of productivity, you can use automation to automate certain tests and deployment as well, so that very high impact activities can also be automated and make your life a lot easier and much more efficient. Furthermore, in terms of the skill development, make sure you understand what to spend your time on, because you're constantly going to be learning new things, but there are so many things out there to learn that you should really focus on that 20% of, perhaps it's a new language, a new framework, way to do things, best practices. Make sure you focus on the ones that are creating the high impact and where you see perhaps your company or your career growing towards in the future. The next thing I can recommend is to control your inbox. Managing your email effectively is essential for a software engineer, because during the day, you really don't want to be distracted by emails, and you want to have the majority of your time be focused on deep work and very complex tasks. So I was researching some ways to be able to control your inbox more effectively, and I found that the former CEO of Google, Eric Schmidt, has a pretty cool 9 rules that he created to truly deal with your inbox and make sure you're as effective as possible in terms of your email communications. The first one is to respond quickly, in the sense that you should be a reliable person within your company. The second one talks about every single word in an email matter, so be crisp, concise, and as effective as possible in your communication. The third one is to clean your inbox out constantly, and I'm gonna leave a link down below to Tiago Forte's One Touch to Inbox Zero, a wonderful article that changed the way I deal with email communications, and make sure that you only touch every email once. The fourth one is to handle email in the LIFO order, so last in, first out, because sometimes the older stuff is taken care of by other people and you should focus on the more urgent things. 5, remember that you are a router and that other people might be interested in the information that you have, so make sure you forward to the individuals that need forwarding. 6 is to really use blind carbon copying very sparingly, because it's better to be transparent within a team and people appreciate that transparency. The 7th is don't yell over email. It's a lot easier to do it in person and a lot more charitable to do it in person. 8, make it as easy as possible to follow up on requests. And number 9, help your future self search stuff. So forward yourself any important emails and maybe write some notes on the content and context to help your future self out. The next tip definitely has to do with the ability to be flexible and continuously learn new things. This is a crucial ability for software engineers because technology changes so fast, as we mentioned, and the need to be on the cutting edge of certain things, certain protocols, certain software, certain frameworks is incredibly important. And some of the ways you can stay up to date in terms of new technologies and things like this is by creating flashcards for yourself. Use software like Anki or Quizlet. Create some flashcards where you test yourself on the most important concepts and logic that you apply every day in your software engineering career. Another cool thing you can do is working on personal projects in your own personal time. If that's something you're interested in, make sure you push your limits and make something you're interested in making. And while working on these personal projects, you can focus on certain skills that perhaps you don't touch that much in your day-to-day job. So for example, if your 9 to 5 is as a back-end engineer, maybe on a personal project, focus a little bit more on the front end and learn how to design and create things on the front end. And also there are incredible courses online. Codecademy is great for beginners. I've used it a lot. And there are great paid courses as well in Coursera, where the machine learning course of Andrew NG is very highly rated and a lot of people that I've spoken to recommend it. So check these platforms and find new courses that you're interested in and spend a little bit of time every week or every couple weeks just going through them. So I would definitely recommend having a second brain, a central hub that contains all of your coding knowledge. Here you can write any new ideas, concepts, new things you've learned, and try to connect everything together and make it your own personal library. During my coding bootcamp last year, I actually used the Obsidian app to create this second brain and added all of the ideas and a ton of things in there and created all of these connections between the nodes. And now it's a second brain and the knowledge bank that I use to this day, because sometimes I find myself wanting very specific information that I can quickly find on Obsidian, and sometimes I just don't want to spend hours going through Stack Overflow to find an answer to something. And creating a system like this can be a little overwhelming at the beginning because it does take time. Just start small. Start writing some notes, some ideas, start linking them and slowly build up. This has been a very, very valuable thing for me. Actually, I was thinking of creating another video on how to create this second brain on Obsidian for software engineers. If you're interested in something like that, make sure to leave it in the comments. That would help me out and perhaps prioritize that video. Yeah, if you're more interested in other second brain things, definitely check Tiago Forte's book, The Second Brain. It's wonderful. It'll give you kind of a high picture overview and also some details on how to implement it. And in terms of something more specific, I'll leave an Obsidian forum and that discusses all of the ways that you can link notes and truly flesh out this second brain. If you want to nerd out, that's going to be in the description as well. Learn to speed type. The faster you type, the faster you will be able to complete tasks. So once you've figured out how to write code effectively and with good quality standards, make sure that you focus on your efficiency as well, your ability to write that code fast. Because if you're averaging perhaps 50 words per minute in terms of your typing speed and you move that up to 100, in theory, you're going to be doing the same amount of work in half the time. So that's a big, big leverage. That's a lot of ROI packed into that. And personally, my typing speed sucks. It used to be around 40 words per minute, which is just bang on average. And I've been able to slowly build up to around 60 words per minute. It's not great, but it's definitely improved a lot in terms of my speed of writing code and just typing in general. But to this day, I'm still practicing as often as I can to hopefully increase, 80, 100 words per minute, 150 words per minute. Well, that's already world record type speed, but the faster you can type, that's just gonna do wonders for your career. And at a certain level, I think one of the distinguishing factors is how efficient you are as a software engineer, how fast you can write code. Obviously quality, but how fast. So definitely work on your typing speed. There's two websites that I use, one called 10 Fast Fingers and the other one called KeyBR, where you can practice your typing speed and slowly bump it up. I would recommend perhaps using 15 minutes of your lunch break at work to just go through some of these exercises, and slowly but surely your typing speed will improve and hopefully not be as terrible as mine. And number 10 has to do with rewarding yourself. As we mentioned, software engineering has a pretty high probability of burnout. You want to make your career as sustainable as possible and your job as fun as possible for as long as possible. So make sure that during the day, when you finish perhaps a code review or implementing a new feature or finally polishing out the bugs of a particular snippet, give yourself a quick break, maybe walk outside of the office for 10 minutes, get one of those nice fancy snacks that are all the rage in the offices nowadays, or perhaps just sit, relax, listen to a bit of music. I don't know, whatever floats your boat, but make sure that you have those small breaks, those little rewards. And even when you start progressing in your career, get a promotion, change jobs, do something that is, impactful and something important, make sure to give yourself a bit of a reward. I'm not saying you have to throw a great Gatsby party to celebrate your promotion or anything like that, but definitely do something. Maybe grab a pizza with your girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever you like. I'm usually not a person that celebrates a lot. Actually, I kind of forget my birthday quite a bit. So I understand this is hard for some people, rewarding yourself, and how exactly do you do it? But make sure that you set some objectives for yourself, a short-term vision, a long-term vision. And when you start completing these things or accomplishing things that you're proud of, make sure you have a little time to reflect and understand how far you've come, how much you've improved. Be kind on yourself, because software engineering isn't easy. There's a lot to learn. There's always something new to learn. Having a little bit of patience and a little bit of celebration from time to time, it's helped me. I'm sure it'll help all of you. I just wanted to reiterate that, again, these 10 tips are in no particular order, and they're just based on my own personal experience and my very limited experience in software engineering. But if you have any more tips, I would love to hear them down below in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, I made another one on specific productivity protocols that you should follow if you're feeling stuck in a bit of a rut in your job. This is a great video, definitely check that one out. I'm sure it will give you a new perspective. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one, amigos.